my name is Yulia and you're watching Sunday News Briefly, where we discuss everything that happened in Ukraine for the past 24 hours and highlight everything that happened this week. Abridged. Why abridged? Because this is just an extension of my daily detailed news lives. While those are normally 2 hours long, you're in luck because I'm gonna try to cover everything in 20 minutes. Let's go. One of the first things that I want to start with today is something that is incredibly important but isn't getting nearly enough attention in the Western world, and that is the Frontline in Bakhmut. Bakhmut is a city in Donetsk Oblast in Donbas region, so eastern Ukraine. And it has become one of the key battles in this war. Russians are not willing to give it up, and Ukrainians are not willing to give in. The battle is swiftly becoming known as the Bakhmut bloodshed, because in the past 48 hours alone, 500 servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine were heavily wounded. While the armed forces of Ukraine have full control of the city itself, the outskirts are seeing fierce battles. Strategically, Ukraine has all the advantage, but Russians are bringing all of their resources and concentrating them around that area. To top it off, it is also incredibly treacherous in the weather department. All of the trenches are completely flooded and have turned into slushy mud. Take a look.
Добрый день. Вот посмотрите, в каких условиях ребята живут. Отдыхают после
5 листопада. Вот так вот мы, ребята, служим. Видите? И представьте, вот этот человек в таком состоянии 5 суток.
It is incredibly hard to fight in conditions like that. However, the armed forces of Ukraine are still persevering, and our guys and girls are making tremendous progress. However, they do need help, and by help I mean winter gear. So if you were planning on helping Ukraine this Giving Tuesday, I would highly recommend that you help Ukrainian soldiers acquire winter gear, because it is critical for their survival. Now that we've covered that, let's catch up on everything that happened this week. First and foremost, a group of American senators have asked Joe Biden to give Ukraine Gray Eagles. Those are attack and combat drones that could really change the situation on the battlefield, especially since Russia now has Shaheds and kamikazes, and would give Ukraine an enormous air advantage. Russia has been proclaimed a terrorist state not only by NATO Parliamentary Assembly, but also by Europarlament. An important next step is for every individual European country and the United States to also recognize Russia as the terrorists that they are in their individual parliaments. Ukrainian cities are still largely without heat, water, and electricity, and rolling blackouts are scheduled all over Ukraine. Russia continues incessantly shelling Kherson after their retreat, and Black Friday this year for Ukraine hit a little different. And yesterday, Ukraine commemorated all of the victims of Holodomor forced famine of 1932-33, which we do yearly on the 4th Saturday of November. One of the most common ways that we show remembrance in Ukraine is we light a candle and put it out in the window. And this year it had more meaning than ever, because not only did we do it to commemorate the victims of one of the largest genocides that Europe has seen, but one of the least talked about. But also because, well, in a lot of Ukrainian households, candles now are a necessity, since light now is a rare commodity. Now that we have covered weekly highlights, let's talk about what happened in Ukraine in the past 24 hours. Analysts at the Institute for the Study of War, which is a DC think tank, are suggesting that the pace of the military operations is going to pick up in the next couple of weeks. And pick up on the side of Ukraine, that is, because, well, Russian soldiers are super under-equipped and incredibly underprepared for winter warfare, at least because they don't have as little as proper winter uniforms. Here is something that the New York Times wrote that signifies exactly how big and how important this war is. Russia and Ukraine are using weapons and ammunition at a pace not seen since World War II. The reason why I think that statement is so important to reiterate is because a lot of people are saying that the war in Ukraine is just another war, and the US is butting their nose in a conflict where they don't belong. In fact, it is the largest military conflict since World War II. German Justice Minister Marco Buschmann announced that justice ministers from G7 countries will meet for the first time in history to investigate war crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. Why is this important? Because while everybody says that war is war and there are war crimes on both sides, Russia has been committing war crimes since World War I and has not once been punished for them. When we talk about World War II, we very often talk about Germany and what Germans did. However, they have been prosecuted and they have paid for everything that they have done, while we never talk about what the Red Army and the Russians have done during that time. So they came back home and they claimed victory, and all of the atrocities that they have done in other countries on their way to Berlin just got swept under the rug. So they're used to getting away scot-free. Initiatives like this are incredibly important to finally bring Russia to justice. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said it best: the more military and otherwise support Ukraine has, the more chances we have when it comes to negotiations with Russia. If Putin wins the war, he and other dictators are going to continue using violence to achieve their goals, and we can't let that happen. And one of the ways to prevent that from happening is to prosecute war crimes. Speaking of war crimes, a little demolition project took place in Mariupol this weekend. What does it have to do with war crimes? Well, they were demolishing buildings in the historical center of the city. Why? To cover up all of the damage from the bombings that they unleashed onto the city earlier in the full-scale invasion. As you might remember, 90% or more of the city has been completely leveled with the ground. And residents of Mariupol today live in conditions unimaginable, thankfully, to most of us in the civilized world. They don't have windows, doors, roofs, drinking water, and they're subjected to dysentery and the epidemic of cholera in the 21st century. I invite you to watch this video to see exactly what happened. And in the meanwhile, the work of the Ukrainian power system has been stabilized in other regions of the country. However, the deficit is still at 20%. And Volodymyr Zelensky said that he anticipates another brutal shelling attack coming from Russia onto the civilian infrastructure of Ukraine in the coming weeks. In his opinion, while they have the missiles, they will continue shelling. The interesting and slightly foolish thing is that Russia's strategy is to destroy our civilian infrastructure to make our people submit. What they don't understand, though, is that it only makes us angrier, stronger, and more ready to fight. In the words of most Ukrainians, without light or without you, without you, without water or without you, without you, without gas or without you, without you. Those things are temporary. Occupation by Russia would not be. And we would rather persevere through all of these awful conditions to maintain our freedom and never have to deal with them. Speaking of Russia's inadequate strategies, this time the Russian propaganda has reached the government website of Belarus, where they published a faux statistic on Ukrainian immigration to the country. According to them, 60,000 Ukrainians have immigrated to Belarus since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, 40,000 of which have come through Poland. Now, Poland came out and debunked that statement, saying that no such immigration data has been registered, and noted that the reason Belarus wanted to publish this statement is to make it look like Ukrainians consider Belarus a safer place than the EU, which, even without data, to a sound mind, would be an obvious fact that Ukrainians would not be immigrating to a country that has been aiding and abetting Russia in its genocide against our population since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. But you know, if their propaganda was smart and good, it'd be more effective, so I guess we'll take it. Prime Minister of Great Britain Rishi Sunak published a video today titled "We Believe in Freedom" that further reaffirms his and Britain's support for Ukraine. Take a look.
I believe in freedom.
I believe we should stand up for the fundamental rights that matter so much to us all.
For our sovereignty,
For our self-determination and for the foundations of a stable international order we're all fighting to restore.
the Ukrainian people face bombing in the day and blackouts at night.
But we know our friends will always be there to help see us through.
The UK is one of our most steadfast allies,
They give weapons for our battle.
Kit to keep us warm.
and friendship to restore our spirits.
We know they will never let us down as we fight to win this war.
With your help, we will secure our freedom.
Together we will never back down.
Together we will be strong.
Together we will protect Ukraine and the freedoms we all cherish so much.
Well, here is an interesting one. Viktor Orban, the fascist pro-Russian Prime Minister of Hungary, has said something incredibly unlike him in his speech today. It is important that Ukraine remains a sovereign state, so Russia can't pose a threat to Europe. More and more Hungarian figures have been coming out recently saying that while Orban has a lot of influence in the country and his supporters are definitely on Russia's side, he is the driving force behind the worldwide image of Hungary as a whole being on Russia's side. The mayor of Budapest and the president of Hungary both proclaimed that the country is incredibly divided and most of its citizens are pro-Ukrainian. So I'm wondering if Orban is realizing that his alliances with Russia are not going to pay off anymore and he needs to jump ship. It definitely does look like a rat running from a sinking ship. The United Kingdom has confirmed the transfer of the latest Brimstone 2 high-precision missiles to Ukraine. President of Energoatom, the largest energy company in Ukraine, Petro Koten said that it looks like Russian occupiers might be leaving Zaporizhzhia and PP quite soon. Here's a quote from his speech. In recent weeks, we have actually received information that there are signs they may be going to leave ZNPP. First of all, a lot of publications began to appear in the Russian press that ZNPP might be worth leaving. Maybe it should be transferred under the control of IAEA, he said. Now, in my personal opinion, that's not necessarily an indication of anything because, well, Russians say one thing, expect the completely opposite thing. But we shall see. And for dessert, a Russian couple has been arrested in Sweden on suspicion of espionage. Ooh, wild. Russian spies arrested in Europe. The reason why they're suspected of such activities is because they bought an apartment in the same building as most officers of Russia's main intelligence directorate. By officers, I mean spies. And right after the purchase of that apartment in 1999, they moved to Sweden and opened various businesses. Not much information is known about it yet, but we will stay tuned. And on that note, that's all I have for you for tonight. And while this weekend wasn't full of breaking news, I do want to point out that in my opinion, one of the most important things to bring attention to right now is the situation on the front line in Bakhmut. So with that in mind, I want to do my part and donate 25% of the monetization proceeds from this video to the Armed Forces of Ukraine, specifically to those who are serving in Bakhmut, in order for them to be able to buy winter gear. So if you enjoyed this Sunday News Brief segment, please don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe to my channel, and share it with friends, because more views translate to more revenue, and more revenue translates to a much larger donation. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next weekend.